The Great Fire of London. Chapter 1. It is the year 1666. London is an old city, with lots of narrow streets. A lot of people are ill because there are rats in all the streets and the houses. One evening, a baker, Thomas Farriner, and his daughter, Harriet, are making bread. It is late.
"We must work quickly,"
says Thomas.
"We need this bread for the king in the morning."
Just then, Mary, the baker's maid, comes in.
"You're late, Mary,"
says Thomas.
Sorry, Mr. Farriner,
Says Mary. Thomas, Harriet, and Mary make bread for 2 hours. Then, Mr. Farriner's wife, Anne, calls down to them.
time for bed, girls.
She says.
We're just finishing,
Says Harriet. Harriet and Mary go up to bed. Thomas takes the bread from the oven.
Good. The fire is nearly out now.
Thinks Thomas.
Thomas?
Calls Anne.
What are you doing? It's very late.
Thomas goes up to bed, but he doesn't close the oven door. An hour later, the baker's shop is on fire.
Wake up, girls! Wake up!
Cries Anne.
The house is on fire!
Quick! Open the window!
Says Thomas.
Let's go up on the roof.
Thomas jumps to the house next door. Anne and Harriet follow him. But Mary stays on the roof of the baker's shop.
Jump over here!
They all cry.
Jump!
I can't.
Says Mary.
I'm afraid.
Chapter 2. People come out of their houses. They all look up at Mary.
Jump now!
They cry.
I can't.
Says Mary.
Please help me.
I'm going back.
Says Thomas.
We can't leave her. Wait here.
Don't go, Thomas.
Cries Anne.
Look! Now this house is on fire too!
Just then, someone brings a ladder. Thomas, Anne, and Harriet quickly climb down. Ten minutes later,
Oh, Mother!
says Harriet.
Poor Mary! She's dead! Don't cry, my love.
Says her mother.
Look at our shop Our things, our home.
Says Thomas.
We have nothing. What can we do now?
There is a strong wind, and the fire spreads quickly to more houses in Pudding Lane.
Where are the firefighters?
Everybody asks. Just then, 20 firefighters arrive. They begin to put water on the fire.
Bring more water!
They cry.
We need more water now!
But the fire is out of control, and soon all the houses in Pudding Lane are on fire. The people in the street begin to ask,
Where is the Lord Mayor of London?
He's asleep in bed.
says an old man.
We want the Lord Mayor!
Cry the people.
Go and find the Lord Mayor. He lives in Maiden Lane,
Says the chief firefighter to a boy.
He must come quickly.
What can we do?
Asks Anne.
We can't stay here.
Let's go down to the River Thames.
Cries Thomas.
Follow me!
Chapter 3. In a different part of London, Samuel Pepys is asleep in his bed. Pepys works for the government. At home, he writes a diary every day. Pepys has a maid called Jane. At 3 o'clock in the morning, she comes to his room.
Wake up, sir.
She says,
There's a fire in the city.
Pepys goes to the window and looks out across London.
It isn't a big fire.
He says to Jane,
I'm going back to bed. Good night.
An hour later, Jane comes back.
Sir, there are more than 300 houses on fire.
She cries. Pepys jumps out of bed. He quickly puts on his clothes.
I must go to the Tower of London,
Says Pepys.
I can see everything from there.
Near the tower, Pepys meets his good friend, Richard Moore.
What's happening?
Asks Pepys.
It's very bad news.
Says Moore.
There's a big fire down near the river. Everybody says it's out of control.
They climb up the hill to the tower. It is now 6 o'clock in the morning. Big clouds of smoke are beginning to spread across London. Bells are ringing from every church in the city.
Listen to those bells.
says Moore.
And look! Some of the houses near London Bridge are now on fire.
Let's run down to the River Thames.
Cries Pepys.
Perhaps we can help the people there.
Chapter 4. Pepys and Moore arrive at the river. Crowds of people are running down to the river bank. The fire is now in the next street. Families leave their houses with their hands full. They are carrying their things away from the fire. Everybody wants a boat on the river.
Over here!
Cries a young man to the people in the boats.
I'm first.
Says an old woman. 3 people climb quickly into one of the boats. It is the Farriner family from Pudding Lane.
It's Thomas Farriner from Pudding Lane.
Cries a man in the crowd.
Tell us about the fire in your baker's shop.
Thomas is frightened.
I'm not a baker.
He says,
I have a flower shop in Cat Street.
the Farriner family leave quickly and go down the river in the boat. Pepys and Moore walk nearer to the fire. There are clouds of smoke, and thousands of rats are in the streets. They are running from the burning houses. Just then, they meet 20 firefighters outside a burning building. They are putting water on the fire, but it is spreading quickly.
Can you stop the fire?
Pepys asks the chief firefighter.
It's no good.
He answers.
There's nothing we can do.
But you must blow up the buildings in front of the fire.
Says Pepys.
Then it can't spread to different parts of the city.
But we need to ask Thomas Bloodworth, the Lord Mayor.
Says the chief firefighter.
Where is he?
Asks Pepys.
Nobody knows.
He answers.
What can we do?
Shouts Moore.
We must speak to the king.
Says Pepys.
Come on! Let's find a boat. We can go up the river to Whitehall Palace. Perhaps we can speak to the king there.
Pepys and Moore go quickly up the River Thames. It is 11 o'clock in the morning, but the sky is black with clouds of smoke. The wind is stronger, and many streets are now on fire. The houses on London Bridge are burning fast, and people are jumping into the river. Chapter 5. They arrive at the Palace of Whitehall.
We're here to see the king.
Says Pepys at the front door.
What's your name?
asks the guard.
Samuel Pepys.
Wait here, sir.
Says the guard. A crowd of men is standing outside the door. They are all talking excitedly. "We must wait for rain," says one old man.
No, we must bring more water from the river,
says a young man.
But we need more firefighters to do that.
Cries a third man.
What do you two think?
The young man calls to Pepys and Moore. Pepys walks over to the crowd of men.
There is only one solution.
He says,
We must blow up the buildings in front of the fire.
Suddenly, everybody goes quiet.
Blow up the buildings in front of the fire?
Says the young man. He is surprised,
Yes, that's right.
says Pepys. Just then, the guard cries,
The king wants to see Samuel Pepys.
Now Pepys is surprised. Pepys goes into the king's room.
Your Majesty, this is Samuel Pepys.
Says the guard.
Good morning, Mr. Pepys.
Says the king.
I hear you have news about the fire. Is this true?
Yes, Your Majesty.
Says Pepys.
The fire is now out of control, Your Majesty.
Says Pepys.
We must do something very quickly.
But what?
Asks the king.
The firefighters must blow up the houses in front of the fire.
Says Pepys.
Yes,
Cries the king.
that's the solution. We must blow up the houses. Then the fire can't spread.
The king writes a letter.
Give this letter to Thomas Bloodworth, the Lord Mayor.
He says.
Nobody can find him.
Says Pepys.
You must find him.
Says the king.
Take one of my coaches. Go quickly back to the fire and find the Lord Mayor.
Says the king. Pepys and Moore go outside at once and jump into the king's coach. Pepys is carrying the king's letter. They drive madly through the narrow streets.
Faster! Faster!
Calls Pepys to the coach driver. Chapter 6. In the end, Pepys finds the Lord Mayor.
Here you are.
Pepys cries angrily.
Everybody is looking for you.
Hello, Pepys.
Says the Lord Mayor.
I'm very tired. I must sit down.
Here is a letter from the king.
Says Pepys.
You must blow up the buildings in front of the fire.
I know.
Says the Lord Mayor.
I want to pull down houses near the fire, but nobody listens to me. People don't want to lose their homes.
Just then, some of the king's soldiers arrive.
Lord Mayor, we are here to blow up houses,
Says one of the soldiers.
Yes.
Says the Lord Mayor.
Good luck. I'm going home now. I'm tired and dirty, and I want to change my clothes.
But Lord Mayor, wait!
Call the soldiers.
Goodbye.
Says the Lord Mayor. The men blow up some houses, but they are very near to the fire.
It's no good.
Says Pepys to the soldiers.
You must blow up buildings 1 street away from the fire.
The soldiers pull down houses and blow up shops. It is now 9 o'clock on Sunday evening. Pepys and Moore go home. For 3 more days, the great fire of London burns. Frightened people and hungry rats run madly through the streets. The fire spreads to the most important houses and churches in the city. Old St. Paul's Cathedral burns day and night. Day after day, the firefighters and soldiers work to stop the fire. On the 4th day, the wind changes direction, and the fire slowly stops. The firefighters stand and watch for the first time in days. Many people come back to look for their houses and shops, but they find nothing. At home, Pepys begins to write about the fire in his diary. He knows the government must work a lot to help the people of London. 5 days later, Pepys and Moore climb up the tower of the last church in the centre of London. They look over the city.
What a black day,
Says Pepys.
Over 13,000 houses, 90 churches, and now there is nothing.
Don't feel bad about that.
Says Moore.
Instead, let's remember something important. Only 9 people are dead.
50 years later, London is a very different city. There are no more old, narrow streets in the city centre, but beautiful, wide streets instead. And a new St. Paul's Cathedral stands not far from the banks of the River Thames. But the most important thing is there are no more rats.